If you were able to decide what foods and drinks could be banned with no public backlash or political backlash, what would you ban instantly? There's probably quite a long list, but I'm just curious to
Oh,
know.
geez. Well, I think one of the things that I talk about the most here is water quality because it's not so much banning, it's really upregulating, the ability to clean water at our wastewater treatment plants. I do realize that it it's very hard to fix an infrastructure even in around the world, right? Because if you even add one chemical that needs to be managed, you're really changing the entire process by which water gets cleaned. So I'm still in the school that you want to clean water when it hits your home, your apartment, your school before you drink it is right where that filtration process should go on, and they don't have to be expensive. Banning, oh gosh, there are so many chemicals to ban. I would say overall, I think banning chemicals like BPA, where it's in every canned food. I mean, it's one of the highest production volume chemicals there is, and it's not just in the food system. I think if you can get rid of they got rid of BPA in plastic baby bottles here in the US in 2012. My co-author was largely responsible for that for some books that we wrote together. But unfortunately, we have all these regrettable substitutions. So they came up with BPS, BPSIP, BPF. And so, unless you get rid of the whole class of bisphenols, which is thousands, and have replacements that can do the same function, we're going to be left with a lot of unhappy consumers as well as manufacturers in many ways.
Yeah, so that's the kind of another problem, isn't it? Because once you ban one thing, they just replace it with another suboptimal compromise, like with the
Right, and
BPA.
that's allowed in our community. I mean, in the EU, you have much more oversight in terms of regulation. You have more chemicals that are removed or not allowed than in the States, US. I also learned recently from people who are in the food packaging community of researchers that one of the key issues is that in the EU, the studies of science in terms of harm is taken care of by one body, and the management and regulation of that stuff is really a separate body. And that's really critical and beneficial because then you have people doing their job without bias. Where in the US, those two components are actually done in at the EPA, you have the researchers inside doing the management and regulation when it's not there. It's not unbiased in terms of how they drop, different changes. So I think that's another really key issue, the difference between the two countries and EU. I'm sorry, with US.
Yeah, yeah. Well, why is BPA used so much, and why is it so widespread?
Because it works. I mean, it's one of those things where when a chemical gets part of production, it is so hard to take it out of production because it's been used for so long and it has this purpose of, at least in canned foods, as an example, it lines the interior so it protects the food and drink in that can from the metal exterior. It was designed to prevent botulism, which is a bacteria that can occur if you have dented cans. So it was sort of like a layer of protection before, the can gets damaged. But no one wants to change the food packaging. We don't even think about food packaging. We're so consumed with food chemicals themselves that people aren't even thinking that one of the biggest ways to get exposed to BPA is actually from the food packaging itself. And so I think that a lot of these chemicals, they're just, they were designed in the chemistry lab. They do a function that they were looking for, and then it's very hard to make replacements. There's a compound called oleoresin, which is basically, I believe, a vegetable based interior lining, but it adds somewhere between 2 and 10 cents per can in terms of costs. And so, again, when it comes down to the bottom line, people would rather use the cheap stuff because no one's really paying attention.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hopefully that changes, but
Yeah.
again, like you said, it's going to take a long time. We
Yeah.
should take the initiative. Do you think there's almost I don't know. I don't know if this is the right word. I learned it in psychology a few years ago. Almost like an agentic shift where we kind of think, oh, the big agencies and the government, they know what they're doing. They'll be giving us like safe food, even though it's wrapped in plastic. Do you think that's a big problem with a
Yeah.
lot of the
Yeah. I
public?
mean, I think, look, we're all human. We're all busy. We're all so distracted by our own lives and work and survival. Like, I get it. I mean, I was that person 15 years ago. I was so, I just relied on other people to do the work or just made the assumption. I had high expectations, and I was sort of mourning the process of what happens in the US market over the last 15 years, because it was kind of like finding out Santa doesn't exist, right? Because you wanted to know that something was there and that you looked forward to having that in place. But to be honest with you, I think being, unlearning is a really and is a really great pursuit. I think it shows intellect when you can learn something and share that with others, as long as it's, obviously vetted in, I believe, science. And so unlearning things is really takes courage, and it takes power to wrap your head around it. It took me years because I was so part of the Western system, coming from a family of doctors, married to a doctor, brother's a doctor, parents and cousins. I just relied on the system to really give me what I needed and no more. And I found out that there's all these other areas of healing. There's all these other area tools for people to think about when it comes to our health. Ayurvedic, Chinese medicine, exercise, sleep management is so critical to human health. Drinking water, all of these things, stress management, they matter. The gut microbiome matters, and that's why I feel like I found a community, lots of people now who understand the science. It's just taken a while.